And now we're going to answer a question from the Knitting Daily community. We have Janice from London, Ontario, who asks, how important is it to really block lace? To help us answer that question today, we have Kathy Elkins from Webb's Yarn Store. Kathy, thanks so much for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Liz. It's great to be here.
So how important is it to block your lace?
Mission critical to block your lace. You get through all of that knitting, and lace projects are incredibly intense. But unless you block them, you're just not finished. Unlike other knitting projects where you can get away without the blocking. I'm going to show an example right here of a lace piece that just came off the needles. And we were talking before we started, looks kind of like a crumpled up potato chip.
It does. It has a little crumpled look to it.
Yeah, it needs a little help. So what you have to do to start the blocking process is you start with a basin of water. And again, you can do this at home in a sink or in your tub, but make sure it's free of cleansers and that the tub is clean.
Does the temperature matter?
You definitely want to use cool to room temperature water. You never want to use warm or hot water on your fibers. You want to use a good quality wool wash, and you just need a little drop in here. You don't need much at all. Just a little bit like that. And then you take your lace piece and put it in, submerge it into the water, and really make sure that the wool wash and the water get absorbed into the project. Especially, it's a little easier because this one's small, but on a bigger one you need to work a little bit, again, not agitating because you don't want to cause any felting. When you're done, you want to let it set for about 10 to 20 minutes, ball it up, and gently squeeze the water out. You don't want it dripping, but you're not trying to completely wring it out either. Bring it to your towel, spread it out a little bit, and just roll it up again, just to get the major dampness out of your head.
Oh, okay.
I sort of think of it like before you're about to blow dry your hair.
Okay, pat.
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 Yes.
Don't rub.
Don't rub. Then what you'd like to do is you want to take it and you'll transfer it to a blocking board. Now, a blocking board is a great tool and something I encourage every knitter to have in their toolkit at home. They're portable, they fold and store very easily, they're not very expensive, and they're screen printed with this wonderful grid that helps you with your measurements. And on lace projects especially, that's very important.
And how am I going to know how far I should, does it, my pattern tell me
Your
to
pattern
block?
Your pattern will tell you, and if you're self-designing, you'll know what size you're looking for.
Okay.
Now there's a couple different ways of blocking. Today we're going to talk about pin blocking. For larger lace projects and larger projects in general, you'd need to use blocking wires or a blocking set of wires and things of that nature. So what you would do is after taking it out of the water and getting it dried off a little bit, you're going to put it onto the blocking board.
So show us how to put in one pin.
Sure. What you'd start with first is doing each of the four corners, and then I work from the middle and create a new middle and create a new middle until they're all done. So what
And these are about a ½ inch apart?
About a ½ inch apart. You really have to eyeball it depending on the project, because the one thing you don't want are any little smiley faces between the pins.
Oh. Okay.
Because that's how it will.
No smiling.
Well, no smiling on your lace, because otherwise that's how it'll dry. So what you want to do is just pull it up and you just pick a little stitch like that, and you push your pin in.
Okay.
And see how this has created two big smileys? Now you go to your middle section, and you
until we have this nice straight line.
And you just keep going till you have that nice straight line. This takes some time, and it takes a little patience. And while you're working on this, you want your piece to stay wet. You don't want it to dry out. So it's very important to have a spritz bottle so that you can just spritz right on your board while you're working, and keep it wet and keep working it. Once it's all set, make sure your blocking board is in a safe place.
Now, what if I don't have a board?
That's not a problem. A board is great, but if you don't have one, or if you happen to have a larger piece, such as this big shawl, there's not a blocking board that's big enough for that.
So I could just use a piece of cloth?
Well, what you can use is either your floor on a rug or on the top of, say, a queen-size bed. But to mimic the grid marks here, you want to use, we recommend a piece of gingham cloth.
Fabulous. Well, now we know how to block our lace to get a lovely finish.
Beautiful finish. No more crumpled potato chip.
Kathy, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Liz.
And we will be right back.
Knitting Daily. Make time for yarn every day. Projects, patterns, ideas, and techniques from today's show to help you make time for yarn every day can be found on the web at knittingdailytv.com. This is show 103. Continue knitting daily every day by joining the online Knitting Daily community and receive a free newsletter 5 times a week, filled with step-by-step techniques, inspiring reader-contributed stories, and free patterns. It's about knitting all the time. knittingdaily.com. Knitting Daily has been sponsored in part by Webb's, America's Yarn Store, the source for all your knitting and crocheting yarns and supplies, yarn.com.